Welcome to Nexus Medical Media. In this video, we are going to talk about the muscles of mastication. There are 4 muscles of mastication. Another name for mastication is chewing. Right, so the muscles include Masseter, Temporalis, Lateral pterygoid, and the Medial pterygoid. Right, so on this diagram, you can see like the outline. This is where you find the Temporalis, you find the lateral pterygoid, the medial pterygoid, and the masseter here, right? So you can see here the mandible is cut so that you can see the medial pterygoid, and outside here from the masseteric tuberosity, that's where you will see this masseter. Don't worry, I'm going to talk about these one by one. But before we do that, I just want to give you one point. I'm not going to talk much about it. We will cover the cranial nerves later. But I just want you to know that the muscles of mastication are innervated by the V3. It's the mandibular branch of the trigeminal nerve. It's called V3. Right? It's the only motor nerve because the trigeminal nerve is mainly for sensation. Right? So V3. Starting with the masseter. Right, so again, here is the masseter. Right, so the origin of this muscle is the zygomatic arch, particularly the lower and medial surface. Insertion, that's the mandible, particularly the ramus, the angle, and the lateral surface of the coronoid process. Function, right, so the masseter has 2 parts, the deep part and superficial part. The function of deep part is retraction of the mandible, and the superficial part is for elevation of the mandible. Remember, the superficial part of the masseter is the most powerful muscle, like in this mastication process. Next is the temporalis. Right, so here is the temporalis, this muscle. Yeah, it's in the temporal fossa. Right, so again, the origin is the temporal fossa. Insertion, that's the mandible, particularly the ramus and the coronoid process. The function of temporalis is elevation and retraction of the mandible. Next, the lateral pterygoid. Right, so firstly, I'm going to describe like the origin, insertion, and function, and then I will show you the pictures. Right, so the origin of lateral pterygoid. Right, the lateral pterygoid is the superior head and inferior head. The origin for the superior head is the sphenoid bone, that's infratemporal fossa, and the origin for the inferior head is the sphenoid bone, particularly the lateral surface of the lateral pterygoid plate. Wow, right? So you need to watch the sphenoid bone one more time and understand these features. Insertion is the mandible, like the neck of the mandible and the temporomandibular joint. The functions of the lateral pterygoid, right? So let's look at it this way, right? So you remember the temporomandibular joint, here the insertion. These joints are combined, they work together, right? The left side and right side. Let's see what happens if there is bilateral contraction. If there is bilateral contraction of this lateral pterygoid, the superior head will cause elevation of the mandible, and the inferior head will cause the depression and protraction of the mandible, right? So this inferior head is the major protractor. If there is unilateral contraction, there will be lateral protrusion, right? In this case, this means sideway movement of the mandible to the contralateral side, Okay, right. So here is the lateral pterygoid. Here you can see it here. Right, so this muscle is the medial pterygoid, the one we're going to talk about last. Right, so again, this is another image where you see this lateral pterygoid, and here is the medial pterygoid. Okay, so let's look at this the origin, insertion, and function of the medial pterygoid. Right, so the medial pterygoid has 2 heads, again, superficially, the superficial head and the deep head. Right, so the origin of the superficial head is the maxillary tuberosity and the palatine bone, the pyramidal process. The origin for the deep head is the sphenoid bone, particularly the medial surface of the lateral pterygoid plate, and the palatine bone, the pyramidal process. Insertion. The insertion is the mandible, particularly on the medial surface, the angle and the ramus of the mandible. The function is elevation and protraction of the mandible. All right, so look here, I would like you to label these muscles, right? Muscle number 1, 2, 3A and 3B, right? So here on this image, you can see 2, 3A and 3B. All right, so this is 3B and this is 3B, right? So it's same thing. So I just want you to label number 1, the name of the muscle. Number 2, the name of the muscle. Number 3A and 3B. So you have 5 seconds. I mean, if that is even possible. Okay, you can pause the video. Right, okay, so these are the answers. Thank you so much. I hope this video was very helpful. And if so, please make sure you give it a thumbs up, leave a comment in the comment section, and most importantly, subscribe.